Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to get this started. I would like to introduce Chris and Lana presenting there towards a Toowoomba Regional Koala Conservation Strategy.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming along. I guess I thought I'd start by just letting you know where Toowoomba is. Have you all been to Toowoomba region? You all know where it is? Yeah, it's a really lovely time to visit Toowoomba this month. There's a big garden festival on, so it's looking very beautiful. Toowoomba Regional Council is, I think, the largest council area in southeast Queensland. I'm from Pittsworth, Landcare, and we talk about Pittsworth as being the heart of the Darling Downs, so we're right in the middle of that area there. And we do have quite significant koala populations up in that area. So I thought I'd tell you a little bit about Pittsworth Landcare. We were actually established back in 1989, so it's been a Landcare that's been going for a very long time. I was a young person when I joined. I think I'm still the youngest person there, which is a bit sad. Anyway, our main activities is very agricultural area. So our main activities have been focused around those standard land care activities, and in particular preserving the native habitat that we have. I put a little note there to say the last time one of us was, I think, presenting at a Landcare conference was when we discovered a new species, the little grassland earless dragon there. So that was quite some years ago. So we do have a soft spot for conserving our really special species that we have up in that area. So this is kind of what our landscapes look like around the Pittsworth area. Lots of agricultural areas that have been cleared, but we have this vegetation remaining on the hilltops in the area, and often we have these interconnecting, you can see that's a dirt road there. This is actually called Bushy Lane, which I love. Single rows of trees down each side of the road, and our koalas are using those as corridors to get between those hillsides, I guess, and to move around the area. We started our Koalas in our backyards project back in 2012. Back then we were just raising awareness of koalas. We were actually collecting seed, growing the seedlings, encouraging people to plant habitat for koalas. And it actually became a key focus of our group. We have about 100 members, probably about 20 of those are, like active members. There's no paid people in our Landcare or anything like that. So we're pretty proud of the fact that we've planted over 22,000 trees in that time. We have a very committed bunch of landholders who are always keen to plant more trees on their properties, which is really great to see. And we have been lucky to get a lot of funding to keep that work going over the time. There's just a couple of photos there of koalas that have been spotted in those trees that we've planted over that time. So some people think if they plant a tree, they'll have to wait like 50 years or something to see a koala in it. As you can see, we're seeing koalas in trees that, aren't even very old, so which is really lovely to see. Now, what happened with our group was, although we know that there were koalas there, it seemed that the government didn't. When they wrote their South East Queensland Koala Conservation Plan, our area was not included in it at all. And then there's this project, Inland Rail project, that was coming straight through our area and straight through what we knew to be koala habitat. And when their EIS came out, those koalas weren't acknowledged at all in that environmental impact statement. So that kind of set us on this path of having to get proof, I guess, that our koalas exist and that we have healthy populations of koalas there. We did have a meeting with the Queensland government, and I can say we came away from that realising that the only people who could do anything about this was us. I think the government's view was we don't have enough resources, we don't have funding. Our modelling shows that koalas aren't going to survive west of the range, but we like to differ from that thought altogether. So we looked at getting some scientific data for our koalas. So we needed to get more information to guide our conservation efforts. We were at the point where we wanted to link up areas and create these corridors for koalas, but we didn't know if we were linking up koalas with disease to koalas without disease. We really didn't know anything at all. So we thought we needed some more data to help guide this. We obviously also needed it to be non-invasive and quite cost-effective for us to do. We were lucky to get a grant from the government, and we partnered with OWAD, which was some environmental consultants. And we decided to do this project where we would collect koala scats and then get them analysed, the DNA analysed. And we chose to go with wild DNA, which is part of Federation University, because they have a really large already established database on koala genetics. So our Landcare members were trained in how to collect koala scats. We were breaking scats open and sniffing them. Thankfully, koala scats smell quite nice, actually. And assessing the quality of them. And it actually worked really well because we were all from the area. We know where to find the koalas. We'd head out, find the koala, collect some scats, send them off to OWAD to be sampled. We only had funding to do 60 samples. We ended up collecting way more than that, as you can see. We chose 104 of them to go off, 98 passed QC. We were aiming for a 70% success rate. So that's what we'd been told by the universities was what you'd want to aim for. So we knocked it out of the park with like a 94% success rate with the samples that we collected. I should say, although Pittsworth is kind of in the middle of the Darling Downs, we decided that this project should be extended across the whole of the Toowoomba Regional Council area. As you know, the koalas travel through. We wanted to make it broader than just where we were. And that was good because it got us to engage with lots of other groups in the area as well. Collecting those scats gave us a lot of data. So we could tell what sex the koalas were. We tested them for their chlamydia status. So I'm assuming most of you are here because you care about koalas and you know that chlamydia is a disease that has a very detrimental effect on them. And we also tested them for the presence of different retroviruses. So CORV is the koala retrovirus. And one of the notes I've put there is to say that there was no CORV-B detected in our koala populations. CORV-B is a variant of the retrovirus that if you have CORV-B and you get chlamydia, then it's very likely to not end well. CORV-B is a bit like HIV in humans. It weakens the immune system. So in all the sampling that the other areas that had been done, like our populations were the first where they weren't detecting any CORV-B. So I think that was quite significant for our populations. This is sort of a diagram of the information we got about population structures. So this covers the whole of southeast Queensland. The three populations in the middle there, 7, 8 and 9, are the ones from our study around the Toowoomba region. So we could see that our populations were becoming separated. So there was not the nice but not as separated. As you can see, populations are sort of down in the more urban areas. We could also get some information about genetic flow, and it seemed that the koalas were moving sort of out of 7 and 9 and into 8. So moving out of the Toowoomba region and the area north of Toowoomba, where there's a lot of development going on, and sort of moving out to our agricultural regions. One of the things that we wanted to find out was, were our koalas, were they getting that genetic diversity that they needed to make them a viable population going forward? So from the data, we could see that our koalas had quite the allelic richness. The top line there tells you about the genetic diversity within the population. So we had healthy populations of koalas. The next line tells us about private alleles. Now, I'm not a geneticist, but the way I think of this is, do they have any tools in their toolbox that no other populations of koalas have? So, and you know, the more tools you have in your toolbox, the easier it is for you to adapt to change or to deal with something unusual that comes your way. So you can see our population in the north area had 4 private alleles. So that's 4 tools that no other populations of koalas have. And our other populations as well also had their own significant private alleles as well. We were also able to gain information on what our koalas ate. So all of this from a scat. It was pretty amazing, right? What we do with this data, I'm not sure. Obviously, the diet data just tells you what the koala ate at that particular time. We know that koalas in our region particularly like eucalyptus populnea, like poplar box, which is quite unique to our, the prominent plant, I guess, in our area, the tree that they would like to eat. And that came out on top there. So I guess the reason I wanted to share this is just to show you that none of us are scientists, none of us were paid. Obviously, we paid to get the testing done and we paid someone to analyse the results for us, to put it all together in a report. But we achieved, I think, something that was absolutely very scientifically robust. So we now have that proof that our koalas exist. Our koalas are on the map. And that helped us a lot during our recent response to the second IES for the inland rail. It also gives us that baseline data for our koalas at this point in time so that we hope to monitor them ongoing. Gave us lots of information about their health. And importantly, it involved, like, everyone in our community. So many people were involved in whether it was reporting a sighting. Have I used up all your time?
No, just 1 minute.
Oh, okay. And going forward, we hope to continue this work. If you do 3 rounds of this monitoring, we can then establish a baseline population number as well, which is always helpful. For some reason, governments always like to know how many koalas you have. And it will help us track changes over time in our koala population as well. Obviously, our biggest role or our biggest job is just to increase that habitat and increase that connectivity. And this data just allows us to do that in a much more, I think, targeted and beneficial way to help our koalas going forward.
I'll give that. Thanks, Lana, and that's just a little indication of the talent that we have in the Toowoomba region. I'm a member of the Save Mount Lofty group, which is an urban-based Landcare group in the northeast suburb of Toowoomba, but I'm also a proud member of the Pittsworth Landcare group and their wonderful work they're doing further west from where we are. My specific interest came when we protected a 500 hectare site of critical koala habitat from voracious developers. We saw them in the Planning and Environment Court and we saw them off. So there's our latest project has been this habitat project, more of that later. My talk, you've seen enough slides and everything. I'm just going to get you pretty images of our images of our pretty wild koalas to inspire you. If you want my talk or Lana's link to her paper, a brilliant research paper, go to toowoombakoalaproject.org and you'll get it there. So Lana, you can do that. So you've heard from Lana, there's a lot going on with koalas in the Toowoomba region. We've got significant populations of koalas and significant local habitat. We have a great band of local carers, rescuers and vets and volunteer groups supporting their efforts. For example, the High Country Koala Action Group in Crow's Nest, just north of Toowoomba, has our region's most significant koala populations. In fact, the data from there, I would hazard to guess, is comparable with anywhere in Australia, the density of koalas around. For example, we found 22 koalas in 2 hours out from the coffee shop at Crow's Nest in November 24. Pretty impressive. Now, for the month of November of each of the last 4 years, we've conducted a regional koala count where we go out to the different regions and get the community involved, and that's to promote community engagement with our species, and there's no scientific basis to it. The more volunteers we have looking, the more koalas we'll find. We have Landcare groups running koala habitat planting projects. You've heard of Pittsworth, but there's Milmaran, there's Gamaran based on Gumbunji, and our own project, we had planted about 4,500 trees in the last project. Right, I'll keep going on that, thanks, yeah. We have our local environment advocacy group, Darling Downs Environment Council, and they're lobbying our council and the state government. So to have an effective conservation strategy, how do we translate all this activity and interest into a coherent conservation strategy? By coherent, I mean something that anyone interested in koalas across our region could pick it up and say, right, I can get involved. And by effective, I mean a simple strategy that will actually conserve koalas. We all know of expensive documents sitting on the shelf of some bureaucrat's office somewhere, gathering dust, seldom read, let alone implemented. So we've got some challenges to get this strategy up and running, and that's where it gets difficult. We don't have a good history of conserving our local koalas. We talk to our elders in our community and they say, oh, gee, when I was young, but not so many anymore. So it's a real challenge for us. Now, we've seen most of the conservation strategies around southeast Queensland, northern New South Wales and down into the southern states. They've been basically around municipal councils taking the lead and over decades building up a body of knowledge. And unfortunately, in Toowoomba, we ain't got that. We've really got Lana's work as the start of our work towards understanding our population. Since amalgamation in 2008, Toowoomba Regional Council have had a lot more resources available to them, but they've done no conservation work. Meanwhile, all the other councils in South East Queensland are doing a heap of work in the conservation space. Over the last 5 years, we've asked the council repeatedly for their assistance, not coming. They've got no money for new initiatives. Anyway, the Toowoomba Council then recently voted to delay a tree preservation regime for our area that's in place in all the other South East Queensland councils. So I don't think they really want to do it. If you were a footy punter, wild koalas and their habitat across the Toowoomba region are down 20-0 at half-time, and we're running into the wind in the second half. Our final challenge is, and probably most important, is that our local koala volunteer workers are getting older and we're fragmented into geographic and activity silos. So the people at Pittsworth, are they talking to the people at Crow's Nest? We're a 12,500 square hectare region, and it's hard to get the people together. The Great National Koala Park, that's just announced earlier this month in northern New South Wales, has been a great inspiration to us. I attended a webinar just a couple of nights ago, and that was really inspiring to me to see what a carefully devised strategy, focused strategy can achieve, but you've got to have a truckload of perseverance and persistence, and that's what we've got to find and bottle. So cut to the chase, what do we need? We need to have, I see, 4 areas that Lana was pointing there: population, habitat, infrastructure and community. Under population, we need to continue Lana's work to understand our population, where it is, its genetic diversity, health, diet and all those things. Then secondly, it's habitat. Our DDEC, our Environment Advocacy Group, is trying to push the state government to include us in South East Queensland so we can get aerial mapping. Well, aerial mapping is just would not be satisfactory for us to really understand. So that's another area that we'll have to do ourselves. But habitat research on koala vulnerability will give us real insights into the risks of those areas, from urban development, inland rail development and those sorts of things. Now, infrastructure. Here, our current carer and rescue groups run on the smell of an oily rag. They really are totally volunteer and money out of their own pocket. So we really need to coordinate our fundraising there to make sure that we've got premises, vehicles, rescue equipment, all those things properly prepared. Lots of others to talk about, and obviously we can take questions from you if you'd like to see Lana or myself after our presentation. But anyway, another area of infrastructure is expertise in fire risk, and trying to make sure that we work in that space to ensure, because that's drought and fire risk is probably a major challenge for our koalas in our region. In terms of community, a lot of work that needs to be done there, but our major area that we're going to work on is in terms of working in schools, because we found that if you chain yourself to a bulldozer, you just harden the attitudes against us out in the community. But if you go into a classroom of grade 3s, they're just so inspirational to you. So we're going to do more of that. So I won't... I'll pass over a few other things there. Targets, obviously we need to arrive at targets in terms of mapping habitat, percentage increases in koala sightings and those sorts of things. If you can just pass through to the last slide there, because I've got a final inspirational story here. We were recently engaged in our project to do some early morning thermal drone koala surveys along the Condamine River south of Cecil Plains. Beautiful area, black soil, and then just a enormous long snaking river there, and beautiful habitat there. We met the farmer's mum who'd come out to Toowoomba to organise a local community charity the next morning. And Mum offered to show us where she had seen koalas recently in the towering river red gums out along the river. And there we were, just there, looking at this beautiful scene. And then Mum reminded us, gee, it must have been about 50 years since I planted those trees. Great, thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Lana and Chris, for that. That was awesome. Now, if anyone would like to change rooms to go to a different session, you're more than welcome to. You've got about 5 minutes before the next one starts.